A little bit about your life as a psychologist and how you began to do feminist work in psychology.
Okay, yeah. In the 80s, I became interested in narratives and narrative forms. And from a constructionist perspective, your narratives, whatever you tell about yourself, tell me about your life, is not really your story, because your story is already preempted, in a sense, by cultural forms that you must fit into. And so, as a woman, there are sets of stories you have to tell about yourself, and if you don't tell them a certain way, it'll seem weird. And one of the ideas I had, which sort of got lost along the way in a way, is if there's something that's not in a story, then it doesn't compute. You don't know what to make of it. And originally, I was thinking about teenagers having babies and realizing that there aren't many good cultural stories about that. There weren't too many. Like, it's neither here nor there. You look in your childhood fairy tales, there's not Cinderella had a baby and she kept it by the fireplace. I mean, no, it's not in there. So, in a sense, it doesn't matter. You can have a baby or not have a baby. Anyway, that was the original thought I had, that what are the narratives and what kind of narratives should be made available that would help people make sense of some of their activities that might interfere with their successful adaptation to adulthood as girls. So that was the original impetus. So I thought, what I want to do then is study what are the narrative forms available to us. And so some research that I did back then was to take popular autobiographies, the things that people actually read, the everyday people read, not fancy Virginia Woolf, you know, but it's just stuff that comes that, you know, because biography and autobiography are highly read. I mean, they're in the bestseller list all the time. So I wanted to compare men's stories and women's stories, and I tried to make some balance, you know, like athletes, singers, business people, and then I kind of hit a little gap because there were no women entrepreneurs that were making money like Getty or Donald Trump. You know, well, I guess there's Ivana now, but at that time there was Donald. And so I read these different autobiographies and discovered that the men's forms totally conformed to what Joseph Campbell called the quest narrative. Everything in the autobiography is totally about making the success, whatever that high point of success is, President Iacocca, President of Chrysler, and so forth. But the women's stories were funny because they were all in their own right. They weren't just the wives of successful people. They were successful people in their own right. And so there was that quest story, but on top of it there was another story or two about family, about love, about children. And so the women's narratives in one sense were very complicated, but messy. They didn't follow one form. You could be up on love and down on career, or down on both. And the stories were very embodied. They were about bodies. And so you could start to see the importance, for example, of having children. Every woman's autobiography described the development of their breasts when they were 12. And what that said about who they were. You know, they were early, they were late. You know, Beverly Sills, the opera singer, was just disgusted she had such big breasts. And Martina Navratilova never had any. You know, and each of them is like struggling with their identities because of this. Men don't have bodies hardly at all. their bodies are like their cars, and they run them till they run down, and it makes them so mad. You know, their body failed them. Ansel Adams, the great photographer, talks about that. All of a sudden, at the end of his life, my body failed me as I was about to do this tremendous project. And you never heard throughout the rest of the whole autobiography that he even had a body until he's about dead. So their private lives, that almost entirely missing. Women's, they were there. So I realized that for women, the multiplicity of their lives, the complexity of their lives was much greater in terms of what they could say.
Right.
Now, I don't want to make too much out of feelings and events that are going on. You know, I want to be careful not to leap too far out of the narrative form to say, and this is life. But so I tried to talk about the issues of difference and what it meant for women's lives. And then I started writing it in a way that I wanted to question narrative form itself. That narrative form in some sense was a limitation on lives. And so I wrote this one piece where I tried to break up the narrative form into ribbons of text. And I inserted quotations from feminists about issues of narrative, and quotations from the autobiographies, and then my words about the autobiographies, and just all kind of hodgepodged it together. So the feminism took on this issue of form as well as content,